Hello internet friends! Today I'm going to be restoring my very old and very rare Sailor Pluto doll from Irwin Toys. She's 20 years old now, and being one of my original childhood dolls, could use some cleaning up to put her back in her original pre-played with condition. Given that these dolls are so old, these videos are intended for adult collectors. I don't know about you, but I really love seeing old things taken care of and made sparkly again, so that's what we're gonna do. So first, let's meet today's patient, Sailor Pluto. I got her a bit later than the others, so she isn't in as rough shape as some of our other projects to start out. I managed to keep her mostly intact. The only thing she's somehow missing are her earrings. I have a vague memory of taking them off in my dad's car and them falling between the seats, never to be seen again. Her hairstyle also needs redoing, since I would keep her loose in her box when I wasn't playing with her, and she slid around loose in there with her hair rubbing up all over the plastic window and getting super messed up. Plus, the elastic underneath her knot has definitely disintegrated, so it's slowly coming out, and if I don't save her hairstyle now, I'll need to do it sooner or later. Otherwise, I still have her entire outfit, and even her accessories and her original box. Fun fact, this is the only Sailor Pluto doll ever produced in the entire world that has ever had the correct colors for her outfit. Unfortunately, the shoulder pads are still inaccurate, but I'm not a seamstress, so we'll leave it alone. Ours is pretty clean, so we won't waste water washing the clothes today. The box needs just a little cleaning up. Unfortunately, they taped in her staff originally in addition to putting it behind a cardboard restraint, and when I removed it originally, I tore the paper a little. Check out that KB Toys price sticker. Some lucky fool bought her originally for $4.99. Now, to start out with, replacing her earrings was very difficult. I looked for a month and could not find a single loose Pluto doll for sale online to source parts from that ended up selling for under $100. Even a bunch of completely naked Plutos sold for around or over $100 while I was watching the market to see if I could find a trashed Pluto with both of her earrings. Eventually, after looking for a long time, I found one of the older 1995 Irwin Plutos with the silver outfit on Mercari for $50. So I bought her, boiled her head, stole those earrings right out, and popped them in my Pluto's ears. $50 for doll earrings, can you believe it? I'm not positive they're the exact same shade of red as her original earrings were. I seem to remember them being almost magenta, but I'm satisfied. They at least match the color of her brooch close enough. I got super nervous about undoing Pluto's hairstyle because it looked more complicated than anything I've done so far, and I was unsure if I'd be able to recreate it. I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm really bad at styling hair, and doll hair is really hard to work with. So to give myself a confidence boost, I studied first how it was created on the earring donor doll I bought. It turned out that the style was constructed with two tendrils that wrapped around the half-up type do to create the knot effect. After a little trial and error, I worked out that if I wrapped the two tendrils in the same direction around the head, and then literally just tied them in a knot, kind of like tying the end of a balloon, it created the knot. I was able to consistently do it on the practice doll, so I felt more confident trying it on the real thing. By the way, those nails are pretty much single-handedly the reason this video took so long to make. So finally, it was time to get her undressed and ready for our standard spa session. Boiling water removed the boots, and yes, indeed, the hair elastic underneath had rotted and needed to be removed. Interestingly, I had a harder time removing the knot as neatly as I did the first time, so I got a bit confused, and unfortunately, it looks like I dragged her off camera on accident, so I don't have footage to review of what happened. I think actually this doll only had one tendril on the side of her head instead of two. Perhaps they had simplified the style a bit in the 5 years between designing the two dolls. But because I had practiced with two, I sectioned off two little bits with doll elastics, as well as the main section and the half-up section, just to make sure that while I washed her, I didn't lose track of all the pieces of her hair. If I didn't keep them separate once we got to the boil washing step and straightened it out, they would all blend together and it would be really difficult to rebuild from scratch. Also, spoiler alert, Sailor Jupiter is getting her own video very soon. Then we began our standard steps of boil washing the doll body, first with a little dish soap to remove surface grime, and then with baking soda and a toothbrush to remove stubborn dust from the gummier areas of her body like her head and legs. Then I washed her long green locks with laundry detergent, rinsed it out, and put some fabric softener in there for the detangling process, combing through with the wide tooth ends of the comb first and then the small tooth side. Her hair is quite long and had gotten quite tangly, but thankfully it wasn't as bad as Sailor Moon's hair and I was able to get the comb through it pretty easily. There was one little loop of hair near her scalp that got in the way and needed to be removed, which I think is a result of how the doll was originally rooted. I should mention that in my last two videos, I've been saying that the hair type of these dolls is Saran, but in my comments on the last video I had multiple people tell me that their hair was definitely not Saran, and it was any number of other hair types instead. I think most likely if it isn't saran, it's probably nylon, but I'm not a doll expert. I really have only tried cleaning up my dolls a couple times, and I have no other dolls to compare them to, so I'm still learning. Thankfully, it seems like the way you treat saran and nylon is somewhat similar. This time I left the fabric softener in and boiled some water for her boil wash. I did 2 dunks at 60 seconds each, combing downward through the hair after each one to smooth out the hair fibers. I was a bit nervous that the hair elastics would burst from the heat, but thankfully they held. I also made sure to get her bangs in the boiling water this time because they were really messy from the way she was stored in her box. After her boil washes, I combed everything neat and then set the style with cold water, making sure to thoroughly rinse out any remaining fabric softener. Because we have to style the hair later, to make this a bit easier, I tried a trick I learned from 1,000 Splendid Dolls. Using a couple squirts of hair gel, I diluted it with water and put it in a hair color bottle. Then I drizzled this on the hair before it dried to give it a bit more shine and keep it from being as loose and sticky as it tends to be when it dries. Leaving the bands in her hair, I set her outside to dry, setting her bangs in their curled shape with a bobby pin. By that evening, her hair was silky, smooth, and ready to style. It's really satisfying to run a comb through freshly boil-washed hair, especially when it's so long and straight like this. I trimmed off some of the scraggly hairs at the ends, and then I sat down to work on her hair, just as I had done in my practice run. I apologize for the setting and my bare legs. We had a bit of a heat wave this month, so pants were just not an option. I squished her head between my legs to hold her still, removed the elastics that kept the parts separate, and tried a few times to tie it into the Sailor Pluto knot. The first couple of times the knot was either really messy or backwards, and even when I got it exactly right finally, over time the knot had shifted so that it was tied in the front again rather than being tied underneath. I also couldn't figure out how to get it to stay put, since adding another elastic gave the style too much structure to lay flat, but without it, it just kind of gradually loosened. Unfortunately, I have no idea how they did it originally, other than what I learned from taking it apart. So out of other ideas, I went ahead and just secured it with a needle and thread to the elastic as best as I could. After all, Pluto was going to go back in her box eventually, where this hairstyle wasn't even going to be visible, so was it really worth putting in so much effort to make it look perfect? This is basically the final result of what I ended up with. You can kind of see the thread from the top, and the elastic is showing, but what are you gonna do? It's a hard style. With her hair done, it was time to redress her, so I got her back in her outfit and boiled her shoes to get them back on her feet. Unfortunately, a significant amount of water ended up in her boots once I got them back on, so I ended up removing them again and letting them dry overnight. I consulted Doll Reddit about ways to get her boots on without trapping water in them, since her feet are just so huge that they literally will not go on without loosening up the plastic somehow. The first suggestion was a hairdryer, so I tried that, but unfortunately it had virtually no effect. Then they suggested boiling the shoes in a plastic bag. So I took a little baggie I got some medication in from the pharmacy and tried boiling the boots in that. Unfortunately, the boots floated in the bag, so 1, I accidentally burnt my finger trying to keep them submerged, and 2, had to open the bag to let air in so it wouldn't be so buoyant, and of course water got in anyway. But this time it was at least not enough to cause concern, so I could live with it. But God, are these dolls and their huge feet so annoying! Now that she was styled and dressed, I took some after shots to admire my handiwork. She really cleaned up very nicely. Her long, vibrant green hair looks so beautifully shiny now, and she might be one of my favorite dolls just between her gorgeous face paint and long flowing hair. I also never thought I'd be able to find a replacement for her earrings, so it fills my heart with joy that all these years later she's finally complete again. There was just one more thing to do, and that was repair the backing of her cardboard box and get her displayed in there. After all, we don't want her rolling around loose in there and getting all messed up again. At the time, I still had long acrylic nails on my fingers from my birthday, so I enlisted the help of my husband. Using clear packing tape and rubber gloves to keep fingerprints off of them, he carefully cut out the loose pieces of printed cardboard that were stuck inside the box with the old tape, and then created stickers by laying new pieces of tape over them. With some fine maneuvering, he was able to secure them back in place so that it was barely noticeable that there was anything amiss. Even if I had never ripped the tape, there would still be tape in those places, so it's basically as good as new. At first, I wasn't sure what to use to re-secure the doll inside the packaging, but luckily I had recently bought a Sailor Neptune doll, who will get her own restoration video soon, and she came with her original packing ties. So I just borrowed those, and after a little trial and error got Pluto, her staff, and her original stand tied back into her box. Unfortunately, one of the plastic casings on one of the ties that I tried to use for her waist ended up coming apart, which was creating a precarious situation for the dress, as the plastic was threatening to snag the fabric. So I used another longer piece that was originally used to secure the stand, and it all worked out. It took a couple tries to get Pluto's hair to lay down flat inside the box and not cling to the plastic window, but eventually I got her in there in such a way that her gorgeous shiny hair was visible, but not being refrizzed by any plastic. And voila, she's finally done. I realized at the end that the plastic window of her cardboard box was more scratched up than I realized, so someday I may replace that with a new piece so that I can see her better in there. I've seen some people do some really amazing work with restoring vintage toy boxes. It's kind of amazing how many different parts of old things can be saved and made like new again. Would you remove the KB Toy sticker? Let me know. I don't know if I ever will. It's like a piece of history. As you might have guessed by the cameos of other dolls in this video, I ended up in the middle of like 4 restorations simultaneously, so more doll videos are on the way. Thanks for watching. See ya!